If you want to turn kitchen scraps into fertilizer, the easiest way is to keep a worm farm. Not just burying kitchen scraps in your garden for pests to find, and certainly not purchasing synthetic fertilizers, keeping a worm farm is versatile, time efficient, and high output. I've kept worm farms for years, and the truth is, even though it seems easier to put your kitchen scraps into a compost heap, it's not easy to collect liquid fertilizer, and a compost heap also takes up a large area of your garden. So in this video, I'm going to break down the 5 most important ways that you can level up your ability to make free fertilizer using a worm farm. And if you do this, you will collect nutritious, high quality liquid fertilizer and compost way more often. By the way, my name's Omi. I've been gardening in Cairns, far north Queensland for 15 years, and I specialise in tropical plants and tropical food growing. The first major point when setting up your worm farm is the location. The number one reason your worms will die is they will get too hot. If you think about it, they will cook in that little black oven unless you keep it in the shade. So make sure they have shade at every point of the day and not inside a shed or any other area that heats up. In fact, in summer, I freeze water overnight and then let it melt through the worm farm during the day to help keep it cool. Here's the new position for my worm farms. It is cool because there is a breeze coming through the sides of the chicken coop. It's shaded all day long, and it's okay if there's some water runoff from the worm farms as I collect the worm tea. There's room above to put the vegetable scraps into, and there's room below to put the buckets under and collect the worm tea. Please comment below where you keep your worm farm so that others can learn and be inspired where they can keep their worms nice and cool. The second big point when considering how to collect your free fertilizer forever is the worm farm. I'm not gonna lie, they're not cheap. And I know there are some DIY suggestions out there, but I want you to buy one. Just do it. It lasts forever and the design is great. Me personally, I prefer the rectangle worm farms because I have 3 of them side by side and it fits better. You don't need a worm blanket, and I will show you why in a moment. The third step, and the most important part of your worm farm, is sourcing your worms. I don't have any affiliation with Enviromart, but buy them from there for your sake. You will have to order them and wait, but their worms are local and therefore more heat tolerant, and you get more worms for your money. If you want your worms right now, you can also buy them at Bunnings. It's also worth pointing out that you can't put earthworms in your worm farm. Compost worms naturally live in leaf litter, and a worm farm is similar to their natural environment. Earthworms will escape your worm farm, trying to find their preferred habitat, dirt. One little tip: even though compost worms don't live in soil, it's worth putting a little in the very bottom tray to provide another place for them to hide from the heat. Now you have your worms, we are all set. No more money to spend, only rewards to reap. Feeding your worms all those leftovers and kitchen scraps. Worms have a reputation for being fussy eaters, and I will dispel that with one sentence: everything in moderation. What can you feed them? Well, here we go. You can give them all fruit and vegetable peelings. You can give them softwood prunings, fallen leaves, lawn clippings, weeds, dead flowers, coffee grinds, tea bags, paper and cardboard, even hair and eggshells. I will put a download in the description for all the things you can feed your worms, plus some things to not feed them. I collect our kitchen scraps in a bowl, which I keep in the fridge. Then in the morning, I empty it into the worm farm. Then I cover the scraps with sugarcane mulch or dry leaves. This brown matter covering of dry grass clippings is even better than a worm blanket because it covers the food completely, preventing flies. And you won't have to lift a slimy, moldy gunk cloth every time you want to feed your worms. It doesn't take long to fill the trays. When one is full, simply add another on top. We're already enjoying our eco-smugness by preventing our kitchen scraps from going to the local dump, So let's double down and collect our free fertilizer. To get the best value, don't just wait for a little dribble of worm tea to seep out the bottom. Get down there with a hose or a bucket and collect 10 litres of worm tea every week. Watering your worm farm weekly neutralises the pH and it deters ants. I also recommend leaving the tap open all the time. The sitting water in the bottom of the worm farm can smell bad, and the worms can drown in it if you don't let it drain out. Worm tea is fantastic at getting nutrients into your plants fast, so give it to flowering and fruiting plants. I don't even bother diluting it. I just pour it on the plants after I've done my regular watering. The benefits don't end there. Once your worm farm is full, you get amazing soil called vermicompost. The vermicompost you want will be in the bottom tray, the one that you started with first. Vermicompost is going to have worms in it, and it takes time to scrape off the top layers and let the worms burrow down out of the light. I'm not so patient, so unless there's a big ball of worms that I can put back in, I just remove all the vermicompost from the center, leaving the bottom and the sides, which is where most of the worms are hiding anyway. Vermicompost is potent, not like regular compost, and can be treated like a slow-release fertilizer. This means vermicompost can be used when starting a new vegetable bed, and I especially like to use it when I'm putting a heavy feeding plant in a pot. I put the vermicompost in the bottom and then potting mix, and by the time that plant's roots reach down into the vermicompost layer, they will have food for months. One final tip. You will find some biodiversity in your worm farm. Snails, beetles, cockroaches, even the flies and ants that I mentioned previously. All of these creatures coexist with the worms, even the ants. But there is one animal called a striped flatworm that actively hunts worms. If you find one in your worm farm, you should remove it. There are plenty of garden hacks floating around, such as use banana peels or use coffee grinds. Having a worm farm is your one versatile, dynamic, plant food generating system that combines it all. That's all I've got for this video. As a recap, I showed 5 practical tips that will set you up for years of free fertilizer. As always, I'm grateful to be sharing the unique tropical tips that you don't often find on other gardening channels. If you live in the tropics, especially far north Queensland, and growing plants is a priority for you this year, then subscribe. There is so much more to show you. See you in the next video.